So welcome every awesome people in episode 4, which I on the go. Today our focus still in education, but more particular in career segment. I am very honored for two things today that I really want to share. First is my guest, and second is the new approach of the English version, which is a little shorter episode, but get to the point. That I name it 10-3, which is stand for 10 minutes with 3 tips. Before we start, let me introduce our amazing get up episode 4, Dr. Ciera Graham. Dr. Ciera Graham Griffiths is an experienced higher education professional, business owner, and accomplished career coach. She owns her own business for Dr. C. Graham Consulting. I will leave all the details on the episode description box, so if you are interested, you can reach out to her for consulting section. Without delaying our time with Dr. C or Dr. Ciera Graham, I would like to start our 10-3 tips. So can you share with us what is the glass ceilings? Not a lot of people understand what glass ceiling really means.
Yeah, so the term glass ceiling, it comes up a lot, especially for those who are historically underrepresented, people of color, women, people with disabilities, LGBTQ employees. And in the most simplest terms, it refers to kind of an invisible barrier that prevents certain individuals from being promoted to a entry level, to a manager, from a manager to an executive level position within an organization or industry. And as I mentioned, it is a common experience that is often faced by people of color when they're trying to move into higher level leadership roles in a very male dominated and Eurocentric kind of corporate organization. The barriers that a lot of people of color face as they attempt to move into these leadership roles, they're often unwritten and they're often very invisible barriers, but they essentially restrict us from being able to elevate our positions. So some of the causes of the glass ceiling could be prejudice and discrimination. So, for example, women of color being perceived as more angry or assertive when they have to state their opinion or when they're asked for their opinion and they have to speak up. It's often these kind of perceptions or this type of discrimination that happens that prevents women of color from excelling into higher level leadership positions. So when we talk about, why we have very few, women of color CEOs, very few female politicians, we've had no female US president, it is because of the glass ceiling.
Okay, so you did mention a little bit about the barrier. So the second tips or question that I have, how does this impact people of color in general? Can you repeat it or maybe explain it a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So, people of color, they're more likely to experience these barriers. So for instance, when we think about like the good old boys club, so that's basically a terminology that refers to kind of gatekeeping that happens among, predominantly white men who are, occupying very high level, visible leadership roles in their organization, and they get together and they socialize, and it is done frankly without including people of color in this kind of network. This network, the Good Old Boys Club, they're also able to share resources with each other, cultivate resources. Oftentimes when it comes to being promoted, they have people speaking their name into spaces. And they're also, I would say, judged less harshly when it comes to like performance reviews and annual reviews than people of color are. So those are just some of the consequences of a glass ceiling. Also, in organizations, we may not be told about leadership opportunities that exist, and we may wonder why some of our predominantly white colleagues are being told about different leadership positions, different executive level roles, and we are left out of those conversations. And, also when it comes to performance reviews, we may not be given any feedback that could really help us excel into these roles. So there's a lot of kind of different consequences of the glass ceiling for people of color.
Okay. So the most important thing is this question because we're going to talk about the real tip on how to handle it. So what are three
Mhm.
tips that can help position someone for promotion or advancement opportunities?
Yeah, this is a great question. So I have three tips that I will share. The first one, I think, is to identify no matter what organization or industry that you're working in, you really need to identify the type of qualities, attributes, and skills that actually lead to a promotion in your organization. So, for most jobs, being able to participate in kind of higher level leadership activities lead to promotion. So that can include, supervising a team, leading a team, being able to take part in your organization's strategic planning, being able to have a voice in the organization's vision. This may also be leading meetings. So, if you're someone who kind of hasn't had the opportunity to lead a team meeting, like being able to advocate to your supervisor or your boss that you would like to lead a meeting, or at least kind of understanding, what it takes to be in a position to lead a meeting. Oftentimes, especially with women, women of color in particular, we're often made to do a lot of things in the workplace that don't necessarily lead to promotion. So this can include like planning an office party or celebration. These are great tasks, and granted, like, you need someone in your organization to do that, but these aren't necessarily tasks that are going to lead to a higher level manager or executive level position. So I think having a very candid conversation with your boss about what are the tasks in the organization that will lead to promotion. And if your boss isn't being transparent about it, I think talking to someone who is in a position that you want to be in and having that conversation is critical as well. Yep. So tip number two is to identify a sponsor and establish visibility in the workplace. So, what is a sponsor? A sponsor is someone, think of them as kind of your advocate. They are a mentor. They're here to help you, excel in your career. When you are having a problem in the workplace, you go to your mentor to kind of figure out how you resolve the conflict. A sponsor is a little bit different because they actually have the influence and power to be able to help you get promoted. So this is typically someone in a higher level leadership or executive role who can really speak your name into spaces that you're not in, talk about your work and your accomplishments. So you need to find that person in your workplace. Who is that person? And then really spend a lot of time with that person and make sure they know what you're doing in the workplace. So sending them a copy of your resume, sending them maybe monthly emails that list some of your major accomplishments in the workplace, and having candid conversations with them about where you want to be in the respective organization. And then it's up to the sponsor to be able to advocate for you when it's time for a promotion. And then tip number three is to identify what your key accomplishments are in the workplace. Accomplishments are very different from your day-to-day tasks. So, for instance, like if you're a social media manager, your day-to-day task could be like graphic design, posting different images to Facebook or Instagram. That's kind of what you do on the day-to-day. But your key accomplishments are focused on activities that really put you in a position to brag about your work above and beyond your job description. So for a social media manager, that could be, establishing a high follower count. If you were able to increase the number of followers, increase the brand reputation, if you were able to get, particular advertisements, for your organization. These are all things that kind of lead to additional visibility and revenue in your organization. So as you're kind of looking through your resume, really think about like what are the key day-to-day tasks that I do, and then what are my key accomplishments. And those are the things that you want to make sure that your boss always knows, like what are you accomplishing on a day-to-day basis. And so when you have like a one-on-one meeting with your boss, or when you have a performance review, it's the accomplishments that you want to point to, because it's really people who kind of work above and beyond and are establishing key results and accomplishments for their organization that get promoted. So those are the three tips.
So I'm sure that your episode will benefit many of the listeners here. Thank you again. And in the meantime, everyone, check out Dr. C. Graham Consulting and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you.
This episode is sponsored by ItalianDesign.com. For more info, go to www.italiandesign.com. 100% real leather, 100% from a real designer, 100% real good price. See you in the next episode. Ciao!